Diddy's darkest secrets are spilling out. And this time, the revelations are coming straight from someone who was closer to him than anyone, his own ex-bodyguard. And the details are not just shocking, they're downright explosive. Hollywood's biggest cover-ups are finally being dragged into the light, and it's all because of this insider who's willing to tell the truth, no matter the cost. The ex-bodyguard, a man who stood by Diddy's side for years.
Things may be looking up for Sean Combs, known as Diddy, but his legal troubles are far from over. The 55-year-old was arrested last September in Manhattan and charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for the purpose of prostitution. Prosecutors allege in an unsealed indictment that Combs led a criminal enterprise that engaged in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, prostitution, narcotics distribution, bribery, kidnapping, and obstruction of justice. His arrest opened the floodgates. Dozens of women and men came forward with allegations, filing civil lawsuits against him. One of those suits has just been thrown out. It was filed in October of 2024. The lawsuit centered on a woman identified only as Jane Doe, who claimed Combs attempted to sexually assault her at a 1995 party in New York City. She further alleged that when she resisted,
claims to have witnessed the unthinkable, things that would make even the most seasoned Hollywood insiders tremble. According to him, Diddy's glamorous image is nothing more than a carefully crafted facade, hiding a twisted reality. Behind the luxury and celebrity lifestyle lies a disturbing world of manipulation, control, and unimaginable secrets. One of the most chilling accusations involves secret parties.
In June of 1995, she alleged that Combs took an interest in her while she was dancing with her friends, asked to speak with her privately, and led her into a bathroom. That's when, according to her claim, things took a dark turn. Doe alleged that Combs began kissing her, but when she asked him to slow down, believing that they were just there to talk, he allegedly became aggressive. When she tried to pull away, the lawsuit claims Combs violently struck her, slamming her head against the wall and causing her to fall. What she says came next is disturbing. Doe claimed that Combs hit her again before lifting her dress and raping her, all while she laid helpless on the floor. Afterwards, she alleged he threatened her and said, quote, "You better not tell anyone about this or you will disappear." Her attorney, Tony Busby, filed a motion requesting that she be allowed to proceed anonymously, but the court denied it. The judge gave Doe a deadline of March 20th to reveal her name or have the case dismissed. She refused, and the lawsuit has since been thrown out. In a statement to Variety, Busby explained that his client did not feel comfortable revealing her identity and ultimately decided to
Wild, hedonistic gatherings masked as industry events, but loaded with sinister undertones. According to the bodyguard, these weren't just star-studded parties. They were secret meetings where powerful people came together to make deals, control narratives, and keep each other's darkest deeds hidden. Drugs, manipulation, and coercion were allegedly all part of the show. And Diddy wasn't just a participant. He was allegedly the puppet master.
The idea that I could be accused of playing a role in or even being a bystander to the rape of anyone is beyond upsetting, disturbing, and unthinkable. That is not who I am, and my heart goes out to all the victims of sexual assault. I am confident that the allegations against me will be proven to be untrue. But for Combs, the fight is far from over. He remains in custody at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, where he awaits the next chapter in what is shaping to be one of the most explosive legal battles in music history. He has pleaded not guilty. And joining me to talk more about this is legal expert Nima Rahmani. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's just dive right in. The judge denied the plaintiff's request to remain anonymous. How common is that, and what factors influence such a decision?
Kennedy, thanks for having me, and it's not common. So state law in states like New York and California, where I am, do allow victims of sex abuse to proceed anonymously. But there is no parallel federal law. It's really up to the discretion of the judge, and it comes down to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 10.
Pulling strings and controlling the game. But it doesn't end there. The bodyguard claims Diddy would recruit young, impressionable artists, promising fame and fortune, but leading them down a path of exploitation. Some of these artists were allegedly used as pawns, pressured to indulge powerful industry figures, and kept quiet through fear and loyalty. The Bodyguard says Diddy's inner circle had a code. Those who knew the truth were bound to silence, and betrayal wasn't an option.
Whether the victim has outed himself or herself, and after balancing those factors, the judge in this case came down on the side of the defense. And I think one of the reasons the judge did so is the length of time that has passed. It's very hard to defend allegations that are 30 years old, not really knowing who the complaining witness is or the victim.
And let's just talk more about this. What are the legal arguments for and against allowing alleged victims to remain anonymous in civil cases?
The argument for is that victims of sex abuse should have the right to remain anonymous. They've already been victimized, and to out them in a very public way really traumatizes them again. So that's why states do have laws like this on the books. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Now, the argument against is that the defendant has a right to due process, has a right to know who his accuser is, has a right to defend his case. And when you're a civil defendant and you've been accused of rape.
And if you think that's bad, brace yourself, because what he says next is even darker. The Ex-Bodyguard reveals that Diddy kept tabs on those who got too close or knew too much. Blackmail and manipulation were allegedly common tactics, with compromising photos, videos, and personal secrets used to maintain control. Those who dared to speak out were threatened into silence or worse, discredited, blacklisted, or mysteriously disappeared from the industry altogether. But that's not even the worst of it.
And this was apparently a close call because the judge came down on the side of the defense.
Is the dismissal a turning point in Sean Combs' defense, or just a minor victory in a much bigger fight?
It really is a minor victory, Kennedy, because this is just one of many victims who have filed civil lawsuits. Now, some victims may not want to move forward knowing that their name will be made public. And that's really what happened here. Part of this is really a defense strategy saying, hey, if you're going to sue my client, Sean Combs, we're going to out you. This may have a chilling effect and prevent others from coming forward. They may say to themselves, I don't want my sex abuse to be public, to be talked about on Law and Crime or other media outlets. So that may give some victims pause, and they may hesitate to move forward if they may have to be named by name.
The Bodyguard says Diddy's obsession with power and dominance extended to a secretive underground network, a place where anything and everything went, as long as you were on the inside. This network, according to him, involved some of the biggest names in the industry, all turning a blind eye to twisted behavior to protect their own secrets. He even alleges that Diddy's influence stretched far beyond music.
On a lot of these claims, there was a window that was open in New York State, then New York City. That window has now closed. So even if the dismissal was without prejudice, unless the new complaint can relate back to the old complaint, there may be a statute of limitations here. And practically speaking, when the victim made the decision not to move forward, that's probably a permanent decision. I can't see that changing.
What would you say are the biggest challenges prosecutors face when trying to prove a case with multiple accusers and decade-old allegations?
It's hard because whenever you have allegations that are old, it gives rise to the defense that they were fabricated. What you want, if you're a prosecutor, is a contemporaneous report, ideally to law enforcement or to a doctor, someone was sexually assaulted. But even if it's to a friend or a family member, something at or near the time of the assault. So the victim, when they testify, they can say, listen, I didn't want to tell my story publicly, but I at least told my friends and family members what happened. Because what will happen otherwise is the defense will say, well, this is just about money, right? This isn't about justice. These are people that are piling on, trying to shake down or extort one of the wealthiest entertainers.
claims of controlling narratives in media, pulling strings in Hollywood, and having connections in law enforcement that kept the worst stories buried. And with this network at his disposal, Diddy allegedly manipulated the careers of rising stars, using them as pawns in a much larger game. Now, the question on everyone's mind is simple. How much of this is true? And if it is, how has it stayed hidden for so long?
The jury won't know because this is an unrelated case. Each case is going to be handled on its own. Now, obviously, the criminal case will have multiple victims because the prosecution has charged at least 3 victims, and I expect that they'll have even more victims at trial as potential prior bad acts cases. But when it comes to the civil lawsuits, they're all individual, unique cases. The jury will have to decide whether the sexual assault happened, and if it did, what the damages are. So you're not going to see civil lawsuits where multiple victims are combined or joined together in one case.
So Combs's attorneys have accused the plaintiffs of being more interested in headlines than legal merit. Do you see any indication of that in the way these lawsuits have been filed?
There are different types of victims. So some of them have been very public in their allegations, and some, like this Jane Doe, were not.
The Bodyguard claims that Diddy's influence in the industry has silenced critics and controlled narratives for years. The reason these secrets stayed buried? Fear, plain and simple. But now, the walls are crumbling. This ex-bodyguard isn't the only one talking. Other former insiders are starting to come forward, and their stories are all lining up. The whispers about secret parties, manipulation, and cover-ups are growing louder.
And others have wanted to remain anonymous, so it really depends on the particular victim in the case.
And we sort of touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but the lawsuit alleges events from nearly 30 years ago. How do courts typically handle cases with such a long gap between the alleged incident and the filing?
It's challenging when you have events that are this old. Any type of cold case, whether it's a criminal case or a civil lawsuit. Obviously, we're not going to have, DNA that you would have in a rape kit. We're not going to have some of the eyewitness testimony. Some of the individuals that were percipient witnesses either forgot or some of them even passed away. So to the extent that time passes, years, decades, that makes the...
And if investigators dig deep enough, this could be the biggest scandal to ever hit Hollywood. With so many damning allegations surfacing, Diddy's reputation is hanging by a thread. The Bodyguard says he decided to speak out now because he's tired of the lies and corruption. He wants the world to know the truth, no matter the cost. And here's the kicker. Legal experts say if these claims hold any weight, Diddy could face charges that go beyond anything he's encountered before.
The allegation was made by Cassie Ventura. All these other victims came forward. It can be difficult for the plaintiffs to prove their case without the evidence.
How does a case like this one compare to other high-profile figures who have faced similar allegations, like Harvey Weinstein or even R. Kelly?
Whenever you have multiple victims, that tends to corroborate the story. So sometimes jurors in a criminal case have a difficult time believing the testimony of one victim in a he said, she said type case. But when you have victim after victim telling the same story of physical and sexual violence, that can be hard for the defense to overcome. And in this particular case, what makes Diddy's unique is apparently there's a treasure trove of video evidence. He apparently, or reportedly, videotaped these freak-offs. If he did, that makes it very difficult for him to argue that the sexual activity didn't happen. That's why it appears that the
Racketeering, conspiracy, human trafficking. These accusations could bring his entire empire crashing down. But the revelations don't stop there. The ex-bodyguard claims that Diddy's connections run deeper than anyone realizes. Allegedly, he's maintained powerful alliances with industry moguls, media tycoons, and even high-ranking officials, all complicit in keeping the truth hidden.
legal and sex trafficking is force, fraud, or coercion.
So that seems to be one of their strategies. What other legal strategies does the defense seem to be using, and how effective would you say that they've been so far?
The defense strategy is going to be primarily to argue that this was all consensual. These were adults. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They may have gotten paid, which may be prostitution and another crime, but certainly a far less serious one. What you want to do if you're the defense is to avoid the sex trafficking and RICO charges. If you get hit with just prostitution, that's going to be a win for the defense. So what's going to be key here is that they're going to try to discredit the victims, say that they've all filed civil lawsuits, they're all after money, and that's why they're lying to get this criminal conviction. I'm not saying I believe it, but that's going to be the defense strategy.
Can you just walk us through, for those that may not understand, just what sex trafficking?
This network of protection has been his shield. But as the truth comes out, the walls are closing in fast. Now, more insiders are speaking up. Former associates, employees, and even some who were part of these secret gatherings. Their testimonies paint a picture of a man who used power and fear to manipulate everyone around him, creating an empire built on dark secrets. The investigation is heating up.
So, obviously, sex is legal, but if you pay something of value, oftentimes money, in exchange for sex, that's a commercial sex act, and that's unlawful in most jurisdictions, including federal law. What makes something sex trafficking is sex through force or fraud or coercion. So I can talk about that. So obviously, if you're a minor, you cannot consent to sex. So if you're under 18 in the federal system and you have sex with an adult, that is per se sexual assault because it's non-consensual. Force, obviously, we know what force is, forcible rape, for instance. In Diddy's case, the allegations are Diddy and his entourage, his security, forced these victims, men and women, to engage in these sex acts. And they were afraid, and that's why they did it. So that's the force component. Coercion.
And the evidence piling against Diddy could be the end of everything he's built. Those who once feared him are finding their voices, and Hollywood's untouchable mogul may finally face justice. So now, the question is, how deep does this rabbit hole go? Will Diddy finally face justice? Or will his power and influence keep the truth hidden once again? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over. You won't want to miss the next bombshell in this unfolding saga. Stay tuned.